Welcome to the Mostly Pilot at Night. Mostly, I am Graveyard, joined by my co-host Salem.
Hello.
This is episode 7 of our weekly All Things Horror podcast. Our topic for this week is the Jeepers Creepers franchise. So we'll be going through each movie, discussing plot points and lore and what we think of it along the way. So let's get into the very first movie, Jeepers Creepers. Came out in 2001. So this kind of starts off that we're in kind of, rural America, right? There's a brother and sister, twins, driving down the road that they're coming back from college. Brother came and picked up sister, and they're driving back to their parents' house, and they're taking the scenic route along the way home, going down roads they've been down many times before, but it's just a good old fun road trip, right? So they are driving down the road, and they have this little game where they look at license plates, and they try to, determine, if they're vanity plates and what they stand for. So it's kind of a little game they have. And then along the way, they come across a truck that says, beating you. And they're trying well, that's weird, beating you. Didn't think anything of it. The guy was just driving really fast and crazily down the road. And eventually he comes back and, starts, driving up really close behind them, trying to scare them, run them off the road, all that jazz. They pull off the side of the road. He goes past. They see the license plate, and, they just kind of go and just don't really think much of it, other than it's a little weird. And then as they're driving past, they see the same, probably 1940s-ish truck and a guy who is dumping two large items into a chute. They look like bodies. They're able to see him do two bodies seemingly in less than a minute of them driving by. And so they start driving down the road and start discussing should they go ahead and investigate what it is. He comes by, he goes past again. They realize, what? What if they are people? What if they're still alive? So they go back, investigate it. They see a tube, essentially like an old, sewer drain tube, the old metal grate ones, right? Justin's Long character goes down and starts to investigate it. He slips and slides down there, and he realizes there is tons of bodies everywhere. One guy was alive, except to say, I don't remember exactly what he said, but get out, something like that, and then he dies.
I watched it a couple of times trying to focus on what he said. I could not figure it out, so I have no idea what he said.
Yeah. So they realize that there's just bodies, stacked all over the wall, and some of them, potentially hundreds of years old. They happen to see a Letterman's ring on the guy, essentially a championship ring. They realize that they had a story from something about 20-ish years ago. They don't remember, about a couple that went missing. So they get pretty freaked out. The sister goes through and trying to watch out for this guy coming back. They get out of the sewer. They go to the diner and call the cops, saying, "Hey, we have a place that has dead bodies. We need to get you guys over here, as soon as possible to see what's going on." The cops do arrive. They kind of don't believe them at first, as they tend to in horror movies, right? So they start driving over to where the body dumps was, and then they realize that the cops get a call saying the church they're going to, which is where the bodies were being dumped, was an old church, is on fire. And then we get to see kind of our first full good look of this man that they think is a man at this point in time. And, it's greenish in color, kind of reptilian-ish with sharp teeth, tuft of long white hair, kind of just like the back of the neck, big trench coat.
I like to call it the skullet.
The skullet? I like that.
He's got a skullet.
And they don't really have a name for him, but as the series go forward, he's referred to as the Creeper. So, while they're at the diner before they call the cops, there's a phone call, and they hear a woman telling them to, watch out for the cats. Don't, if you see one with too many cats, get out of there, you're in danger. They just kind of brush it off, going, this doesn't make any sense. Anyway, the Creeper kills the cops, and they try to get away. And then, they're trying to find help. They go to the first house they can see. Once again, this is, unspecified rural America, somewhere with cornfields and wheat, everything everywhere. They realize this lady has a lot of cats. And then she's looking out the field, who are you? Why are you here? Don't bring any cops here. And she goes, wait a minute, that's not my scarecrow. And it's the creeper coming after them, right? So they don't know why he's really after them, but they realize that the warning they got on the phone call was coming true. The creeper kills the old lady, and then they run him over. I don't know what, 5 or 6 times.
Yeah, it's a few times.
Yeah. They never check to see if he's dead. They go, that's enough. Let's move on. And they go to the county police station that they're in. They cross a couple counties on this trip, kind of really unspecified county names. And they get the cops involved. And then they're heading out there. And then a woman comes in claiming to be a psychic, knows their names and everything that's happening. She's warning him, when you hear that song, I hear one of you screaming, playing to the song. I think it's song called Jeepers Creepers, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, kind of a shootout with the cops with their riot gear that for some reason, they have the plexi shield masks. And when they're shooting, they lift them up, even though they're see-through, which is a little odd.
You can't talk through plexiglass, dude. Come on.
Right. So they realize that, this creature's out there, and, they damage him. And he is found in the cell block eating a part of one of the inmates that happened to be there. And he's able to regrow the part he's missing. The psychic, conveys to them that this is kind of what he does, is he's able to regenerate. He comes out every 23 years or every 23rd spring for 23 days to eat, to regenerate whatever part he needs, whatever part he's missing from this hibernation for 23 years that he has. And he's been doing this forever. He's ancient. He's old. And they hear, on the news that there's, stuff about bodies that have been there for hundreds of years, some with wooden teeth, that this has been going on for a very long time. And then, it really comes down to a stand down with the creeper, and then the brother and sister. The creeper has Barry, the brother, hold, and the cops all had guns trained on him. And the sister goes, hey, we're everything inside. We're exactly the same. There's nothing that he has that I don't have on the inside that you may potentially need. For a while there, it seems like the creeper might take her up on her offer, but he smells Justin's Long character, and smelling's a big part of this. Is he likes to create fear, so then you have the pheromones released, and he's able to smell you, and he's able to smell the parts of you that he might want to continue his longevity. So he takes Justin's Long character to an undisclosed location. The church is burned down. I think it's a old refinery, it looks like. And you hear the song Jeepers Creepers playing. And kind of the last shot is Justin's Long character kind of strung up. You start his legs work up. And you see that his eyes have been taken, but through the back of his head. So there's just holes in the back of his head to his eye sockets. And then you see the creeper pop his eyes out, and it's because he had brown eyes. I don't recall what the color of sister's eyes were, but the creeper wanted his eyes.
The creeper's eyes before that were like that milky white.
Milky white, but kind of bluish, though, too, right?
No, yeah. I mean, yeah, it definitely was. But yeah, they looked like they were like, dead, rotten eyes or something.
Right. So, I mean, that's kind of the gist of the plot. This is an interesting take. What were your first thoughts when you saw this?
First thoughts when I saw it is essentially it was kind of like just a basic example of how horror movies were rolling at that point in time, like in the early 2000s. It was pretty like I said, common, basic. It was ran along the same lines and stuff like that. I mean, really, the only time I had any genuine like interest or like, wow, that was interesting, was the ending. Like I did not, and usually they never have bad endings in horror movies. I mean, never.
Right.
And it's just a straight up bad ending. I mean, no one does anything heroic or anything. Like there's no like nobody saves anybody. I mean, there's kind of sort of a final girl, I guess. Because she survives, but it's not because of her own strength. Like it just fails. And it just, I thought that twist was interesting enough for me to kind of put it just, I mean, one step above all those kind of generic movies around that time.
Right. I don't recall if I saw this in theaters. It came out in 2001. Usually October, I think they came out. I would have just been old enough for I was able to get in because my theater ID'd people. If you weren't 17, you weren't allowed to get in. But I'm pretty sure I saw this in theaters. And, my kind of first thought when seeing this, first time 21 years ago almost, was I go, you know what? Maybe the horror icons are coming back. We have classic ones that we got 70s and 80s, 90s. We got Ghostface and Candyman, but we had a non-speaking horror thing we haven't really seen in a while because a lot of people at that time were quite quippy, right? We had the untalking creature.
Did you see all the way through?
We don't know really
before
Salem, or was this kind of your first?
I definitely liked it. Again, this is another one of these movies that I had assumed for years that I had just seen this entire movie multiple times, in fact. And then rewatching it, from beginning to end, focusing on it, I realized I didn't watch the last half of this movie like ever, because I don't remember any of like the police station stuff and beyond. I would say like everything after the diner, I don't remember at all.
Okay.
I definitely don't remember the ending. So I know, like I said, that's why I know I didn't see it. But again, the beginning part, I know I saw. Like I knew what he looked like. I knew what the truck looked like. I knew the whole like sniffing thing and all that stuff. I knew all that. So I know that I've seen the first half. I just never saw the second half. So the first half I've seen at least once. So that I technically rewatched. But the end of it, I've only seen this one time. So.
Yeah, I mean, I probably rewatched this movie. I wouldn't say yearly. It might be every 2 years ish. So I do watch it enough. And back when you had cable or if it would be on TV, I'd watch it then too. I wouldn't turn it away. I'm like, oh, you know what? This is just a pretty good movie for me. Even if it's just background noise, I know enough about it. I don't think I'm going to catch anything new on any of the rewatches. And so, like I said, it's something I rewatch a lot. So I really like it. But I kind of want to get into, the lore of this, right? We discuss, how important is story or lore or anything like that. I think the lore is this. They generalize this. They can be any cornfield, any interstate that we can go on that we go a little bit south of us that we get into the cornfields pretty quickly, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was a pretty good any town, any field USA. So I think that's a good setting for it. It's always that time frame, like it's early 2000s. Not everyone had cell phones, or as the sister called it, a portable phone. So cell phones really weren't going to do much, let alone in 2001. In the middle of a cornfield. We still don't have bars sometimes in the middle of cornfields in America.
Correct. That is very true.
Now, as the lore goes, obviously the creeper had been doing this for hundreds of years. So if it's every 23, every 23rd spring, let's say he's been doing it for 10 of those, 230 years, it'd be probably pretty close to what we were seeing, but they hinted at that the creeper was older than that. We don't know how much older. To me, this seemed like a creature feature meets Frankenstein's monster. It's just like a different way of Frankenstein's monster, right? Different body parts from different people needing to be kept alive.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, essentially he's like a self-perpetuating Frankenstein.
Right.
So like instead of needing the doctor to rebuild him, he just like eats whatever part he feels is not going well,
Right.
and then replaces it. But it looks like I don't know. They sounded like he ate a lot of hearts, so maybe the heart is just like the generic thing that keeps him alive.
Well, I mean, he ate the tongue out of the cop. That was kind of the first thing they eat because he needed his tongue back, so he got a new tongue. And it did sound like, yes, he ate a lot of hearts, but it almost seemed like he ate a lot of hearts, so he have multiple hearts in him. So if one gets penetrated or run over or crushed, that he would continue to live.
Well, it wouldn't necessarily add another heart because, like, when he ate like arms and legs, it only replaced his existing. It didn't give him extras. You know, like if that was the case, he'd like eat an arm and then he'd have 3 arms.
Right, unless he's able to eat a certain amount of internal organs that's just kind of there and regenerates as necessary. Like the external stuff, you know, as you see, you get run over multiple times, don't really seem to bother him.
Well, and it doesn't really seem to matter. Like, it's not like he's just like a normal person that has to regenerate limbs. Like he can survive like without it. Like he doesn't really like bleed or like suffer any real damage. Like, I mean, he gets like, does he get hit? No, I don't think. No, he doesn't like get hit in the head in this one.
No, we do like, see that later on.
Right? Yeah, I mean, he loses a leg, he loses an arm.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, he gets shot a bunch of times, and yeah, but it doesn't really phase it.
Right.
Like, yeah. So I mean, even though he needs to like eat the parts to regenerate them, he is also just like invincible, essentially.
Right. We're kind of back to the, you know, silent, unkillable creature or supernatural entity that exists. Right. We don't.
Right.
I mean, there is some lore, and really, we're just, you know, dipping our toes into the lore of this movie for the lot. Now, what do you think about having this creature and this, you know, uniqueness there, and then having a psychic in there as well? Do you feel that was like a weird parallel?
The reason I think the psychic is there is because the guy who created the creeper probably wanted some of this background information that he gave that creature to come out, because otherwise there's not really an opportunity for it to come out. I mean, they're like the only real insight we see into like the creeper as a being is when Justin Long is in that church basement, right?
Right.
That's it. That's the only time we see anything. And he's not going to like write about himself that, I come out every 23 years and I have 23 days to eat. Like, he's not going to do that.
Right. So you're saying that the psychic was an exposition dump.
Right. Yeah. The psychic is there to give that background information that the guy who created the creeper wanted you to know. He wanted this new character, this new, villain that he created to have that 23 background. And so right. The only way that you'll be able to get that is from a psychic. Or if you have like some kind of like, hunter who knows about him and hunts him every 23 years or something like that, which we get later on in the series, but not in this one. So the only way to get it would be like that kind of thing. Also, the one thing that I didn't get is like if he only comes out every 23 years and he's only out for 23 days and he spends those 23 days like hunting and killing as much as he does, like where does he get all the time to make all those like taxidermied people?
Well, it's weird that on the rewatch, I was asking, why does he taxidermy people? What's the purpose? Why does he take the bodies? Who cares? He's invincible. Let the bodies stay there.
Yeah, but like I can see like, okay, you eat these people and you get something like, okay, because he scares them, he sniffs them, he's like, oh, this guy's got a really good heart, right? Or he's got a really good liver. So I need to kill this guy and take his liver. So you kill him and you take his liver. You want to like, it's a really good liver, right? You want to like remember where that liver came from. I can see you taxiderming the people that you stole the liver from. I get that part. If you only come out every 23 years for 23 days, where do you get all the time to taxidermy people? That takes a lot of time.
Right.
Where do you get all the time to like fix up this car? Where do you get all the time to like make all these weapons?
Right. I mean, unless he's been doing this for hundreds of years, obviously got a car at some point in time. There's just a lot of filler that you don't really get. He he taxiderms them, and then he embalms them too, so their skin is still there. They're not rotting or anything like that.
No, yeah, they got that weird like plasticky look, like that. Yeah, so like they've been embalmed, but they've also been like epoxied or something. Like they were creepy, but the whole place was covered in them, and it's. I mean, that's an interesting element. Obviously, that's disturbing, right? It's supposed to be, but like, where does he get the time to do that?
Right. And it seems like he's more focused when he's creating fear, when he's smelling the pheromones. That's mostly for internal organs, arms, legs, head. He doesn't seem to really care about, the internal stuff is what he cares about. Like, do you think he's going after like the best liver? So one that will last him maybe 3 seasons, 2 seasons, 3 seasons of doing this. He doesn't have to get a liver every time.
Well, maybe he's like a really heavy drinker.
Maybe.
And he just needs to like get a new liver every year. I mean, that would be a great way to just, avoid any liver damage. You just get a new liver every year.
Right. Yeah.
So
okay, let's get into kind of the highlights of this movie for you. What would you say the highlights are for you on the Salem?
The highlights for this movie would definitely be the ending. I love bad endings, and bad endings are so rare in the horror genre. They really, really are. I mean, you'll get like an after the heroes win, like, oh, the monster comes back kind of thing. You'll get that, right?
Right.
But you don't get a truly bad ending to where like the people who are supposed to be the heroes just fail.
Right.
And the villain just walks away with everything that he wanted. The thing that he was trying to get the whole time he walked away, and everybody is just the worse for it. Those are so rare in the horror genre, and I'd really, really like to see those bad endings. So that was definitely the highlight for me.
I mean, yeah, I agree with that. On the rewatches, kind of the lore, like there's some pretty stupid things, but the creature itself, how he operates, and the fact, that he lives at the end, that you don't have to, on the sequel, you don't have to prepare like, okay, how is he coming back this time? How is he defeated this time? He wasn't defeated.
Right.
You don't have to have a reason for him being around the next time. I agree. That's a good highlight because, I mean, there was the sisters being the final girl, but I mean, sometimes there's characters that make it to the end and usually one sacrifices themselves, but it's always to win. It's never to just flat out lose.
Yeah. Yeah. She was the final girl by default. Right. Not by any real actions on herself. She did try. I mean, don't get me wrong. She had the whole speech at the end of like, I'm going to be the sacrificial lamb, right?
Right.
But that was usually at the point where like he'll go, okay, I'll take you, and then of course she'll like pull a knife out or what, some kind of goofy thing.
Right.
Like I like them peepers, bitch.
Right. Oh God! We'll get there. Yes,
that's the scene that would usually happen in a horror movie, right?
Right.
It's like they try to like negotiate, or they like try to like confuse them or change them, and they try to like they look like they're sacrificing themselves, but really they have a plan, and they like stab them in the back or whatever
right.
It is. And that was the scene that they were going for, and just for that, the creeper to just go nope and just right out the window. I mean, like immediately right out the window, and everybody just goes, "Oh man!" I mean, it's just a bad ending. And then you actually have to like hear Justin Long screaming in pain and then see the holes in his head. Again, genuine bad ending. Very rare to see. Very, very, very much enjoyed.
All right, so low points of this movie. What are some low points for you?
Low points is there are so many scenes where everybody is just standing there watching things happen and not doing anything. I mean, like him and his sister stared at him and just watched him do stuff for so long. I mean, it's ridiculous. I'm like, do something, run away. I mean, do anything at all. Don't just sit there and stare at him. Like, you got all the time in the world to get away. You're just standing there staring. Like, I get they're supposed to be scared or whatever, but after the first time it happens, like you've already seen this. You should be over your, paralyzing fear at this point. Just
right.
I mean, out of there.
I mean, yeah, Justin Long, when he came out from the sewer, was just couldn't speak. He just had a blank stare, like he just saw the worst thing in the world. And trust me, he did. But
right.
I mean, there's a lot of staring. There's a lot of okay, what do we do moments here while he's just, standoffish with the creature. You're not going to win. Like there's,
right.
I agree with that as a low point.
But I mean, to be fair, I mean, the creeper was also just like dancing around doing like dumb stuff, just, I mean, normal villain stuff, trying to look creepy, but they're just like staring at him while he's doing it. It's just like, you might as well just, pause it and just let them stare at each other for like a minute, because that's what they do.
Right. Low points for me. I'm just trying to think if there's anything like other than the psychic being the exposition dump. Not much of a purpose to her, quite honestly. She couldn't prevent anything. She knew how it ended. Even though she knew how it ended, she couldn't do anything to prevent it, which was kind of like a Deus Ex Machina event. You're like, oh, she knows about the creeper. She is going to come and save the day, because that is a trope in, I think, horror movies of the psychic being able to see all the stuff and then being able to save the day, right?
Right. Yeah.
And if the psychic's generally able to, the psychic gets killed, which if they're psychic, they would have seen coming, blah, 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 right?
Yeah, like the Shining.
Right. So, I mean, there was a lot of points that, you go, okay, this is where to defeat the creeper. This is where it is. And they don't have it, which is fine. It's just, it is throwing our expectations kind of out the window, which is a highlight. But like I said, the low point is if this creature has been, let's say, in existence for 230 years, just to have a nice round number for, 10 iterations of this, and in the same area, and no one knows about it other than the psychic, because you can see into other people's minds.
Mm-hmm.
That's weird.
It is.
I mean, that's, would you say there's 100 people down there at least that we just see down there?
Well, they said, I think the official count. Well, I think this is later on, like in the series where they say, but I think they said they found at least 300 bodies down there.
Right, and that's assuming let's say he takes one person each day. That is about 13-ish sessions of the seasons of the creeper.
Mm-hmm.
Which, yeah, you hear the people going missing, but there was no lore. There was no people going, watch out for the creeper. The creeper will get you. They just know people went missing, which is very odd for an ancient evil, if you will, to not have that in the movie.
That's fair, and especially since he's gone for 23 years at a time.
Right.
Like, no one went in that church basement in 20 years.
Right.
Like, I mean, it's like a broken down church on the side of the road. Like, I mean, a lot of people, like, goofy urban explorer people, are just curious people on a long road trip. I'm sure they'd go down there.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? It's like, of course it would be found. I mean,
right.
And again, if it was found when he was like asleep or whatever, I mean, of course they're gonna know what happened down there. They're gonna know who all those people were, everything that's going on. I mean, I don't know if they would find him. I don't know if he sleeps in like a coffin down there
or
cocoon, what. I don't know.
Or yeah.
They never say where he goes during that time period because we only ever see him. But I mean, I guess we should mention that the first 3 movies take place over 3 days.
Yeah, through the last 3 or 4 days of
the cycle of the 2001 cycle.
Correct.
The first 3 movies take place in that same cycle. They don't. It's not like different years or anything. It takes place in that same cycle.
Right. Right. So, I mean, you'd think, okay, he's only alive for 23 days, essentially, for every 23 years. So he's lived only like a year. Of a wait time. We don't really get much, and even further down, we don't get much to decide what happened. Is he in a cocoon? Is it that he's normal? We don't have a good enough lore background at that point in time to really get to that. Can anyone live that long if they only were awake for 23 days every 23 years?
Right.
So our rating system for this franchise is something we don't see in the first movie. Is he has essentially a throwing star or ninja star that he creates out of skin and teeth and bone. So we are out of 10, 10 being the best, 1 being the worst, or you can go 0. How many creeper throwing stars would you give this movie?
Let's see. The first movie, I'll give it, just because of the rest of this franchise, but I will give it 8 creeper throwing stars out of 10.
I agree. 8 is a very solid movie. Something for me that I like to go back and rewatch. And that's something you would kind of rewatch again.
Yeah. Like I said, that ending is good enough for me to go back and watch it. It elevates that generic early 2000s horror to that next level.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I'm gonna keep watching it for sure. All right. So then you want to go ahead and discuss Jeepers Creepers 2.
Jeepers Creepers 2. I don't know what year it came out. Do you know what year?
2003.
2003. So this is 2 years. Okay, so Jeepers Creepers 2 is completely separate from the first one. It takes place in that same cycle, like we said, but it has, I guess, kind of has a returning character, but not really. But right. I'll get into it. Anyway, so it starts off with you're on a farm, and there's like a dad who has 2 sons. They're like working on the farm, and the dad's like, kind of like a curmudgeon-y, like, oh, my kids are always doing bad stuff, blah, blah, blah. And the kid's like hanging scarecrows. And he hangs like the first scarecrow, and his dad's complaining. Hangs the second scarecrow, dad's still complaining, and now his brother is now like, bullying him essentially, as siblings do. And then he looks over at the third one, and the third one is, of course, the creeper, just hanging out on a scarecrow stick. The kid figures out something's wrong, tries to run. The creeper chases him down. The dad and the brother, basically run into the corn trying to find him. They're unsuccessful, and the creeper gets the son. The dad and the brother are, very angry, and they go to like working on their, I don't know, they're working on something. It's like a weapon making montage thing, right?
Right.
And then that's it. They cut away, and now we're in a school bus full of high school kids that just came back from championship. I think they're like basketball
with the numbers, another Letterman jackets. Yeah, there's like 6 or 7, so they're a basketball team.
Right. Yeah. So they're a basketball team. For some reason, they have cheerleaders, but they only have 3 cheerleaders. Oh, okay. So there's the team, there's 3 cheerleaders, and then there's like several adults. There's like the bus driver lady. I think there's like 3 coaches, like 3 adult coaches, yep. I believe. So anyway,
they also had some news, like reporters from the school newspaper there too.
Right. But I think that was a kid though. I think it was supposed to be.
Yeah, as a kid, and they had some like water boys and stuff like that too.
Right. Yeah. So it was like everybody, team and accompanying,
right,
servant type people, whatever they are.
Right.
So anyway, so they're driving down the road. They're like singing their fight song and whatever, being high school kids, fucking with each other. Anyway, so of course, flat tire. Oh no! So they pull over. They go look at the flat tire, and it's the first appearance of the creeper throwing star, which looks like a bunch of claws like soldered together kind of thing with a tooth in it.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, this is weird. I think the bus driver cuts her hands on it. Like, oh, it's super sharp. Like, this is, it's weird that we saw this in the road. So they're like trying to call for help, and they like nobody's phones are working. I think only a couple people have phones. This is 2001.
Right.
But anyway, they're trying to use the CB radio in the bus, and they're not getting a response. They do that for, it looks like several hours, because they're like, there's guys like sun tanning on the roof of the bus.
Yeah.
For some bizarre reason, there's guys that just all decide to go pee in a field together. Like standing like hand in hand while they're doing it.
As you do.
Understand why. Yeah, of course. Just weirdly bizarre behaviors happening. But eventually they decide, okay, we're not getting any help. We have to like get out of here. We can't just sit here. No cars are passing by. We need to leave. So, the bus does have 2 tires in the back, and it was only one of them that got popped. So they're like, okay, we can make it. We just drive slow. So they're driving slow. Boom. Of course, another one pops out, and now it's nighttime. So they pull over and they go look and they see there's another, creeper throwing star in the other tire on that same side. Only this one is like made out of skin, like the middle part is made out of skin. And it's a throwback to Justin Long. In the first movie, he had like a little rose tattoo around his belly button.
Yep.
And it's very obviously that rose with a belly button, like on the creeper throwing star. So they're like, okay, well, this is, disturbing now. So we need to like, put down the flares and then like get out of here. Right. We need to, this is like, getting weird now. We need to leave. Still can't get anybody on the radio or the phones or anything. So they're placing down flares, and then one by one, the creeper picks off all the adults pretty quickly. They're just gone. So of course all the kids are scared, there's no adults left anymore. So they get on the bus and they kind of hunker down in the bus. And as they're hiding in there, the creeper is like, crawling all along the windows and stuff, like looking at them all. And like, he's kind of pointing out certain ones. And like, there's this like goofy scene where he's like, saying like, no, or like, get out of the way. Like, I want to see the person behind you. And then when he sees the person he likes, he starts like licking the glass.
Yep.
It's very bizarre. But essentially what he does is he's pointing out which ones that he likes, because as they kind of, told you in the first one, he scares you to get this pheromone going, whatever it is. So he sniffs you and then he knows which ones he likes, so he can get like the parts that he wants from the people that are superior, or the ones that he likes, whatever it is. So he picks out, I think, like 4 kids or something like that.
Yeah.
So like, and he kind of leaves at this point. And they're all kind of like infighting, as the like, we're all scared. We can't go out there. Like, let's just push out the kids that he like picked out. Right. And then we could just leave without them. It's like, it's like weird infighting. I think it's just trying to cause friction inside, but anyway, it's kind of interesting, cause they can't get out, but they're kind of stuck in there. And then slowly but surely he like, he breaking windows and kind of crashing in and trying to get in, and they do fight back fairly well. They somehow have javelins, even though it's a basketball team.
Of course, you need javelins at basketball. Everyone knows that.
Yeah, they like threw this javelin. It was a weird scene because they stuck the javelin through the ceiling, and all of a sudden the javelin went from being like, it was like what, 4 or 5 feet long. All of a sudden it went to being like 12 feet long.
Yeah,
because it like went through the entire roof, all the way through his body, all the way through his head, and was sticking. So the javelin's sticking 3 feet out of his head, because the javelin's now 12 feet long. Whatever. I mean, that's just a minor gripe on whatever. So that happens. There's the weird scene of like, they show him with this javelin like stuck all the way through his head, and he's like trying to like push it one way, he's trying to like push it the other way, he can't get it out of his head, so he just ends up like tearing off a whole chunk of his head. And they're like sticking their heads up, like watching him do this. So like they've seen him do this. So like eventually, I know he was like playing dead for a while.
Yeah. We find out that he has wings. Like,
well, yeah.
I mean, we found out in the first one, but yeah, his wings kind of pop through the hood of the bus.
Right. He has them in the first one, but he only really used them when he flew out the window with Justin Long.
Right.
Like, he flopped them out a couple of times. I don't think he didn't really use them.
No.
Anyway, but this one, he's flying all over the place. That's how he gets the people that are, the adults that are outside, as he like, drops down and picks them up and then flies super fast in the air before they can see it. They're gone. Slowly but surely he's picking off kids. They try to get out of the bus, and he's like, he had jammed the emergency back door. They can't open the front door. So they're like, they can't get out. And eventually they do, manage to like wedge the front door open. And they get out, and then he's like picking them off kind of in this field, back and forth. They do get to, where do they call the farmer guy from?
The CB.
Oh, they found another truck.
No, the CB on the bus. One of the water boys eventually picks up the CB, and the farmer and his son actually are within distance now of the CB.
Yeah, so the farmer and the son are like, oh yeah, we'll come and get you. We'll call the cops right now. So of course they do not call the cops. Correct. And they go there. Essentially, the guy's like planning on using them as bait so that he can make sure that the creeper is there, so that he can fight him to avenge his son. So yeah, they're all running. Like essentially, they like all kind of like break apart in all these weird smaller groups, and they disappear. And like some of them are never seen again.
Correct.
It is a lot of them just completely disappear. But yeah, eventually they all kind of. Well, the one girl, Minxie was her name. I thought it was like the dumbest name I've ever heard of. Minxie.
Yeah.
Fake name. Anyway, so she ends up, when in her running, she runs into the street, and it seems to be a different street. But gets in the truck with the farmer and the brother and their dog.
Yep.
And they drive down to where the bus is, and they see that some of the kids have gone back to the bus to try to hide. And the creeper is trying to get them in the bus because there's several holes that he has in the roof that from falling on it or reaching through and grabbing people through. So he gets there and he's got this giant like harpoon thing that he made out of like a post holder machine. So he shoots the thing with the harpoon and he just kind of flies up and he's like yanking the truck all over the place. It doesn't seem to be doing much. He eventually detaches it, after it like crushes the truck all up. And then he shoots it again through the bus this time. And he hits him. Again, it just kind of flops the truck over. The bus falls over. It tears a hole in the bus and gets away. Like nothing is really resolved. And so then they're chasing people through the fields. I'm trying to think of who it is. I think it's Minxie because Minxie is the one who has like these weird psychic visions.
Psychic visions, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, just out of nowhere, she just has psychic visions, and she sees Justin Long. Justin Long does come back for a minor cameo here, where he's like, on the side of the road, and he's like pointing her in the right direction. And I think he actually tells her about the 2323 thing, to kind of like reiterate it from the first movie. It's like a psychic has to tell people the background of this character, and so she kind of fills that role, even though that's really all that she does.
Correct.
Anyway, so they're all like trying to chase this creeper, because now it's like injured because he shot it a couple times. So they're like chasing it through this field, and they eventually track it down, and then the farmer dad like stabs it again, and then stabs it a whole bunch of times.
Yeah, stabs him through the head, heads him down to the ground. Yeah,
right. And then he's stabbing him a whole bunch of times, and it looks like he like kind of like closes up into like a kind of like cocoony type thing. And they basically tell him like, yeah, you didn't defeat him; he just ran out of time. Like his 23 days was over. So that was it. So you're like, you didn't defeat him doing all this stabbing. It just ran out of time. So and then that's literally it. And then they go like 23 years in the future. You see like the old man farmer still sitting there with his big harpoon machine aiming at it. And it's like literally hanging on a wall. They're like
bad out of hell.
Yeah, bad out of hell. And they're like charging people money to come and see it.
Right.
So it exists, and then supposedly they're saying in the next cycle he's ready for it if it comes back.
Yep. That's pretty much And Minxie has the psychic visions that out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty strange, but yeah, I mean, at least we got a Justin Long cameo. We had a good tie-in with the first one, right? So what were your first thoughts when you saw this movie?
My first thoughts was, it was just, I don't know, the high school thing, just bizarre. The way that they acted, in the beginning was just weird. I mean, just like a bunch of dudes like suntanning on a bus roof. Like, I mean, that doesn't ever happen. Like a bunch of dudes going to pee on the side of the road, like standing side by side holding hands like that. That doesn't happen. There's like a lot of them just like had their shirts off for no reasons all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, whatever. I mean, I guess it's normally ladies, so I guess it's okay if they do it with men once in a while. I'm not upset about that. It was just kind of off-putting. But I mean, overall, it's not terrible. I mean, I like the kind of twist that they were like, at least trying to like, put the hunt to the creeper a little bit this time.
Right.
I mean, of course, there was the element of being, defenseless and being hunted by him, which is, what he likes. But there was also that little bit of, somebody hunting him, or at least attempting to.
Yeah.
Which was interesting, I thought.
Yeah. So I definitely saw this one in the theaters. Having been out of high school then for a year. Still didn't like the high school element of it, surprisingly.
Right.
I thought it was a pretty worthy follow-up for a horror movie because sometimes the second entry in some of these aren't really good. And, they kind of went with like the night he came home and was still home type of like Halloween 2, even though it was 2 years later and this was 2 years later and still the same night, right? And they kind of followed that platform of it where, you have the creature or the evil or the big bad hunting you, and then the second one, they kind of get back. Like there's more knowledge than some of the people seem to be more knowledgeable, even though there's no one the same from the first movie. The second movie that would have that knowledge, just
right.
the psychic dream exposition dump again. But I thought it was a pretty good successor. I definitely watched 1 and 2 together when I watched them.
Yeah, no, I mean, 2 is not. It's not a bad movie. It's not as good as the first one in my eyes, but it's not a bad movie. It has a more traditional horror ending where at least they I mean, they do make a point that you didn't actually defeat it. It just ran out of time, but still it is stopped,
Right.
At least it's like not continuing to just do whatever the hell it wanted to. Like in the first one, it was just, it was minorly inconvenienced by the story and then just went on doing what it was doing. And this one, at least they stopped it from doing whatever it wanted to do. And then eventually stopped it completely.
He went sleepy. Yes.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, at least there was that. So this one has more of a traditional horror story. It didn't have quite the bad ending that the first one did. So I don't see it as good as the first one, but it's not bad. I mean, especially as far as horror sequels go, it's not bad.
Right.
Like I said, there's a lot of weird, bizarre elements in it that I find off-putting, but again, not to the point where I think it's bad.
So would this be on the rewatch list as well? That you'd watch both of them together and say in the night to have a Jeepers Creepers night?
Sure. Yeah, the first two, yeah. The first two is good. I mean, yeah, definitely the first one, but this one, yeah, I can see that.
I mean, it definitely seemed like a good conclusion that we always tend to get in movies, right? That the big bad's defeated,
right?
So, so do you want to get into the lore a little bit, or the additional to the adds to the lore that we had?
Sure. So in this one, we add a little bit more to the lore, and that he creates his own weapons, right?
Right.
So obviously we see the throwing stars. We see several of them in the movie. He obviously makes them. He obviously makes them from parts of his victims because, like I said, one had a tooth in it. One of them had Justin Long's belly button in it. So, I mean, these are obviously tools that he made. So it's
right.
A lore that he has the skill to do that. There's also that one knife that they kind of prominently showed, which had that weird kind of ivory scrimshaw handle.
Which seemed like it'd be the way they framed it in there, they really focused on it for a good 10-15 seconds, that it might be ancient Mesopotamian type carving that you'd find in there, to show how old he is.
Right. And it kind of showed it looked like vampires shying away from the sun, kind of.
Right.
Was the carving that was on it. And I thought it was going to be the key to killing him, because I mean, when the old farmer guy has that harpoon, that knife is literally the tip of the first harpoon.
Right, which they recovered. The knife was found when his son was killed.
Right. Yeah. When the son was gone, they found that where the son disappeared from.
Right.
So obviously he had dropped it. And they kind of showed, I mean, in the first movie, he had that axe, right? That big crazy looking axe. He killed the cop with the axe, and that it only appeared in the one scene. He never used it again. When they hit him with the car, a bunch of knives fell out of his pockets onto the car. They didn't focus on them. They didn't really show them, but you saw them clunk and you saw them out of focus on the screen. But they didn't really show what they look like. So, I mean, I guess in the first one, they kind of showed that he does use weapons, not just his bare hands. He uses his bare hands for most of the movie, but he does use weapons as well. But yeah, in the second one, they kind of showed that there's a little bit more into it. Either
Right.
like, obviously he makes some of his own weapons. Maybe he carves them and stuff. I mean, they didn't really go into it, but it was just a little bit extra of the lore there. They didn't really add more onto his story. I mean, you still don't know who or what it is. Everybody found out about the 2323 thing again. But I mean, other than that, you're not really getting more out of it other than, he has hobbies.
Right.
I guess is basically all the more lore you get out of this one is he has hobbies when he's not murdering.
For these handmade weapons, he sure just leaves them about a lot, doesn't he?
Right. I mean, the throwing stars I kind of get because it looked like he just makes them as a tool, but like that knife seemed like, even if he didn't make it, if he still had it from somewhere, it seemed like it was like fancy or kind of important, right?
Right.
Yeah, but he didn't seem very he didn't care that he got shot with a harpoon with it.
Right.
They didn't even focus on it at all. It was just there.
Right. It's not like the Kandarian demon from Jason Goes to Hell that was a big focus on all of a sudden. That was never in lore before. Yeah, I can see your point of like the way they focus on it. Maybe it's just another subversion of expectations that we go, oh look, we can use his weapons against them. No, you can't. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, I thought that was odd because they focused on it, like I said, in most horror movies, they're like, oh, this is the weapon that can finally kill them forever. And then this one, it was just like, yeah, we're going to put it on the top of the harpoon, and then we're going to shoot that harpoon, and it's never going to be mentioned again.
Right.
It's literally that harpoon is gone. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about that knife anymore.
Right.
Okay.
And obviously the Minxie has the psychic dreams that she just has now, and it's never seemed like it. She didn't seem fazed by it, so it must be a common occurrence for her. We just don't know enough about her character, her backstory, to know if this was a trait that she had.
She didn't. There was the scene in the bus where they're like, "Oh, so what? You're like a witch now, or whatever it was."
Oh.
Where you're like a psychic hotline now. I think what they said, and she's like, "Yeah, I guess so." That was it. Boom. Explanation over. That was it. Just like, yeah, I guess so. That was done. All right. Her eyes rolled back in her head, and now she's psychic. Everybody's just accepting it.
Did you expect the psychic from the first one to come back? It's the same road, not that far apart. Like, do you feel like that she was set up to be the hunter, the Dr. Loomis, the sage that might be able to go forward and help hunt this evil?
Yeah, I did. I mean, honestly, it really seemed like they were kind of set it up because usually the sequels have some kind of bridge keeping them together, right? Like at least one minor character that comes in to like explain to you what's happening,
right?
Like the whole 2323 thing. So I was like, it would be very easy for her to come in to explain it again, but no, they just like put it off to this side character that they have like one throwaway line to explain why, and that was it. Done.
Was that just another subversion of expectations? Yeah, that we always expect the Dr. Loomis, the antithesis of the evil, right, to be there, and we don't really have it.
The terrible child psychologist?
Well, yeah.
All he is. He's just bad child psychologist. That should be his business card.
Correct. So what about highlights for you?
Highlights this one. I mean, I liked that they kind of went a little more into, like showing like his weapons and showing that there was maybe a little bit more behind it, right? Than just a nameless kind of slasher thing. There was some kind of lore there. Obviously, we got like basically none of it, but it was a little bit of tiny tidbit showing you that there's probably more to this. There's probably more behind this, these weapons and this ancient stuff, but we're not going to give you any more than that. But I mean, I thought that was interesting. I mean, that was the part that I liked the most, I would say.
Right. They kind of showed what happens. Like, okay, he gets, if your head's taken off, how do you regenerate a head? How do you eat the head or the person to regenerate the head if your head's partially destroyed? Like you said, 30% of his head was destroyed, but his mouth was still there, and he was able to do it. And we see him rip off his own head, and then the head come up from his stomach, briefly show the head of the kid that he got it from, and then changes back into the creeper face, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, what would you do? Like, I'd be like, oh shit. And he literally ripped they say that he ripped his head off. Like, what do you do after that? Like, how do you go, he's more, he takes more damage than any other icon I think we've ever seen. quite honestly, in 2 movies.
Yeah, I mean that's fair.
But I like it. I like the hints at the lore. I like that you kind of, it was almost a standalone movie though in itself too, because you didn't really know who Justin Long character was. It's not any different than having the very first, standalone movie in a new franchise that you have visions of specters of the past and you don't know anything about them. So that could have been easily the idea of that, just someone previous. Not much lore other than we got to see his rose tattoo around his belly button. We see it on the handle, so we connect it. But kind of stands alone in itself too, though.
Yeah, I mean, if you didn't see the first movie, I don't know if you would. I mean, you'd still be able to put together the rose belly button thing because they did, like, he had a hole in his shirt, so you got to see that. So I mean, you'd be able to put that together. But like, as far as like he's a dead victim, I don't think you would have got that. Well, I guess you would have, because how else would we get his skin, right?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, maybe it's just if you watch the first one, it's a little bit more, juice behind it.
What about any low points for you?
Low points is just the high school kid stuff, man. It was just, I don't know. There was like disturbing. There was like just like this weird borderline like racism stuff. There was like just a weird, sunbathing on the roof and peeing together, and like it was just, I don't know. That's just off-putting.
Well, and then
I didn't like it.
And then with racism, with Izzy, homophobia there too. Right. It was just like they tried to portray the high school experience, and I think they did it poorly.
Yes, agreed. Agreed, very much so.
Maybe I didn't play sports in high school. Maybe it was that way with the jocks in high school. I don't know.
I didn't either, buddy. I don't know. Maybe, I mean, hey, maybe we should get a jock consultant to come in here and tell us if that's how it really was or not. But I'm just going to go out on a limb and say it was not.
Right. A low point for me was there was not a lot of humor, but more humor to it. Like, especially with him being creepy and licking the window, like that has nothing to do with fear. That was put in there for laughs. You know what I mean? Like, him, his weird third nostril on top of his nose that he had to smell people.
Yeah, I don't know what that is about.
Right. And then him pointing to people and then wigging his finger around and then creepily licking that. That had nothing to do with fear. I think him crashing into the bus had to do with fear a lot. But now, correct me if I'm wrong. This may be a low point in my mind is, okay, you have the emergency door on the back of the bus. Mm-hmm. You have the sliding door that's on the front of the bus that slides inside. Yeah. What about the emergency windows on the side?
Yeah. Yeah, they always have those too.
Right. They didn't even mention or try to get out those windows.
Nope. Yeah, no, I thought about that too. Well, not only that, but like the emergency exit in the back of the bus, like what they said, like, oh, he jammed it, because they showed like one screw falling out. Like one screw falling out would not keep it closed.
Correct.
A screw falling out would, if anything, help it open. I mean, it's not going to like stop it from opening by whatever. I mean, they said he jammed it, but how do you jam an emergency door?
Right.
I mean, that doesn't make any sense.
Right. But yeah, I for sure, I'm just on the rewatch. I'm going, where are the windows? Like the emergency windows. There's always ones in the middle of the bus each side.
Yep.
That should have been, if the windows were shattered, and they were, surely those kids could have gotten out those windows.
Well, yeah. I mean, and again, they showed that there's a giant hole in the top of the bus,
right?
that they could have gotten out, because people came in and out of that hole multiple times during the movie.
Now, how they did that, I don't know. Maybe they
did. Again, but they did. So obviously, you could have just used that to get out.
Right.
Whatever.
All right. So I'll go first on this rating for this one. For rating the first one as an 8. This wasn't that bad, especially for a sequel. I'd probably give this one 7 creeper throwing stars out of 10.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. I mean, I'd probably be in the same boat. 7 creeper throwing stars out of 10 for me too.
All right.
Not as good as the first one, but yeah, I mean there's some interesting things there. There's some weird off-putting things there, but it's not enough to push it too much lower. It's not Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's a pretty solid second entry into the franchise, which I said usually falter a little bit. So let's go on to Jeepers Creepers 3, which came out a whopping 14 years later in 2017. So how do you even describe the plot in this one? This is where the plots start getting a little messy.
Right.
Kind of just we open up, we see we start off with the young lady, right, on the farm with the grandma.
Yeah,
I think so. I don't remember her name because it's generic young girl number 4, whatever, right? She
Addie,
yeah,
Addison,
yeah.
They call her Addie.
Yeah. And she's kind of wakes up and she sees like the dawn, right? Dawn, right? She sees her grandma having a conversation out in the field. And we see the grandma, and we've seen her. She's been in some Rob Zombie stuff since or before then too. She's
been in a lot of stuff even older, like 80s stuff, 70s stuff.
Yeah. We see her talking to her son, warning her that that she's by a certain part on the farm. The son's going, you don't want to dig this up. You don't want to know why I buried this here. Just leave well enough alone, right? And having a conversation for maybe 5-ish minutes. But when we see her granddaughter looking at her, she's by herself. We go, pretty interesting. Why is she talking to herself? Maybe she didn't see who you'd assume would be her dad, right? So, we get that scene, and then we kind of go, get some farm life going on there, and grandma, kind of digging up the spot. I believe that's the order of the sequences. Then I
think the police station.
Yeah, we get to the police station, and we find out that this time at the police station is the very same night from the police station scene in Jeepers Creepers 1. I'm pretty sure it's the same guy playing the same cop as well. We see him arriving with all this riot gear. We see the truck at the police station, which was missing from Jeepers Creepers 2. He was flying around at that point instead of taking his truck. So the cops are preparing. Cops are getting killed. They start investigating the Creepers truck, and also it has a whole bunch of booby traps in there. It has metal spikes that come out from the back. They see some bodies in there. They're like, oh, we got to take this to impound. It has a harpoon gun shooting out the exhaust pipe coming out of it, which is amazing at that point. Right. And you're like, hey, we got to take this impound. And then all of a sudden we have this sheriff show up with a posse of people wearing like almost like a skull with wings coming out of the back of the head. Like, oh, who are these people? They seem to know who they are. Whereas the sheriff is like, I know who this is. I have the background. These people have all been wronged by the creeper, and they're here for revenge. We're here to help you. And they're talking, trying to figure this stuff out, and they realize like the truck's been impounded and it's on a tow truck. It's just a tow truck magically appears and took the truck away without anyone noticing, really. And then they have to realize like, oh, we gotta stop it. He's gonna go after the truck. You see the tow truck, this is weird. The creeper comes along, takes out his glorious axe, cuts through the chains, and his car kind of rolls off, and he's kind of has Ego from Guardians of the Galaxy 2. He's literally standing on top of his truck while it's kind of going, driving it,
right?
If you will.
Yeah, they kind of like weirdly insinuate that it has like its own will or something,
right?
But yeah, it's something like that. But also, okay, it's on a flatbed tow truck, right? Now, the tow truck, the flatbed never moves.
Correct.
But when you watch it through the back window, it gently rolls down.
Yep.
And lands on the ground. So there should have been a huge drop off of like a 4-foot drop off when you go from like the end of it down. I mean, so yeah, that was
right. Yeah. So
continuity error. I found one.
Yeah, there you go. So you realize, okay, now he has his truck. Now he's going to start wreaking havoc. We know this is taking place kind of in that same night, even though we don't have any existing characters other than the cop at this point in time that's carried on from the first movie.
And as an aside, that cop has the worst hair plugs I think I've ever seen.
Yes.
It looks ridiculous. It's like, dude, you just had him wear a hat the whole movie.
Right.
I mean, it looks bad.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. So then we go back to the farm. We see the grandma digging up the hand that we found out is part of like the creeper's hand. Like her son had it. The very first thing is someone flashing back to something that happened 23 years prior. And you see the creeper and the hand drops down. It turns out that was her son that took the hand, buried it, and we find out that her son is dead, that she's talking to her dead son as a vision. And we see like with spine removed or something like that. And she unwraps the hand, she touches the hand, and she goes into a hypnotic trance, and she floats with like the hand holding onto her hand, pulling her up in the air, and she has some vision, some clarity of something, right? She realizes it's really ancient, that's really evil. And the sheriff and the cop also come along, and the sheriff does the same thing, right? He touches the hand to get more insight into something he's been hunting. Other people want to do it, they don't do it. They kind of are standoffish with that. Meanwhile, Addie goes and, running some errands with Buddy, I believe is his name. Goes back to like his farm or hay, and they see a whole bunch of people hiding under trucks.
Buddy Hook is his name.
Buddy Hook.
Buddy Hook is his full name.
Buddy Hook.
I remember it because it sounded very stupid.
Right. So they're like, what's going on here? And you hear like, oh, there's something up there. He's got a couple of guys, and like his dad's kind of under a truck whispering. They're like, what? And starts making a whole bunch of noise, telling them to stop. And then, the sheriff comes, he almost comes with like, they're financing. They realize they're trying to fight the truck and realize like the truck's bulletproof, that it can't do any damage to the truck, just like you can't do any damage to the creeper. The truck has the same supernatural elements as the creeper. And they brought like a machine gun or like one of those, what kind of Gatling guns?
They called it a Vulcan cannon, which is made up bullshit. But again, it's like a spinning barrel type gun, right?
Right.
And the whole, you understand why they have spinning barrels on those guns, right?
So throw the bullets away, right?
Well, they have spinning barrels like that because if you shot that many bullets out of one barrel, it would overheat and melt.
Okay.
You can't shoot that many bullets through a single barrel. It'll literally fall over and you won't be able to shoot anymore because it'll bend and it'll blow up. So they spin the barrels, so that, and it's timed perfectly so that the bullet fires when the barrel passes in front of the chamber. So like let's say you have 10 spinning barrels, you're not shooting 10 bullets at a time.
Right.
You're only shooting one at a time, but you're shooting every time that barrel passes the chamber, you're shooting one bullet. Now, this movie showed them all firing at the same time.
Correct.
Because again, they don't understand how guns work.
Right.
That really upset me. That was very stupid. I mean, I'll get into it later. I'll get into it.
So yeah, they realize they can't do any damage to the truck. They shoot it, and bounces off and kills some of these people who are now this part of this elite task force that are here with the sheriff. Now that they know what's going on there, the creeper at the farm with Buddy Hook and his dad realizes that he wants Addie. There's something about Addie that he wants. You don't know what. Never really specified on things for the most part. So they're trying to run, hide in the barn, field, and then the sheriff comes with this gun that he realized couldn't do anything to the truck. He starts, with the sheriff and the cop. The cop's, this great marksman, right? He's trying to damage the creeper at this point in time. And then like the creeper starts, flying at, he's in the sky, flying at the sheriff who's using this gun. And he gets pretty much just chopped in half at that point, right? The great arch rival of the creeper, pretty killed, a lot easily, right? And then they're realizing this is going on, and the creeper eventually finds out that they had his hand, like he was able to kind of sense it, and they're like, oh, we know what you are now. And that's kind of how he gets defeated. He just shouts in rage. A whole bunch of crows die around him. And that's how he's defeated, is they know what he is.
Yeah, that's just the end.
Right.
I mean, it was like, it's a bizarre ending, because like that happens, and then the girl that was running away, and like, her boyfriend and her grandma are like, let's go rescue her, and then they just find her on the side of the road.
Right.
There was no adventure to get her back. They just found her. Like,
yeah.
Oh, okay.
You're okay.
Get in the truck. Yeah.
And so they have kind of like a post credits thing of this, right? You go, hey, it's right. They're picking me up here. What do you mean they're picking you up here? It's okay. It's along the way. They don't care. It's Addie and Buddy Hook talking about it. And he puts on a letterman's jacket and gets onto the bus. And you realize that this is really this was the same, kind of started the morning of the first one, with the night being at the police station. And this led up into the second Jeepers Creepers with the bus. With Buddy boarding that bus. We're like, all right, they're doing their chant. So this takes place. It's a sequel, but it's a prequel and a sequel. Sequel to the first one, prequel to the second one.
Yeah, again, that makes no sense. I'm sorry to say. It makes zero sense, because obviously no one on that bus knew what that monster was or what was happening. And now that kid had first-hand experience of what that monster is and what it does.
Yes.
So that makes no sense. I don't know why he would even bother doing it. It's the same writer-director that did all three of these movies.
Correct.
So it's not like somebody else like misunderstood what he was saying or like threw their own kind of thing in there. No, it was the same guy.
Yeah.
So he should have been able to like check his own work.
Right. The movies exist. Yes. So that's kind of your first thought of this.
I mean, there's a lot of thoughts that I have with this one. I don't know. It's like they took like one step forward and then two steps back, I felt, with this movie. I mean, they introduced some more interesting things, but they also like took two steps back by making those things ridiculous.
Right.
And it's like, I get like, you're adding interesting things, but then you're making these interesting things just stupid. And it that just really upset me. I mean, I'll get more into that when we get to that next little point. But that was basically the thing. It's just, again, I felt like it took one step forward and two steps back.
Now, was this your first time watching this?
Yes.
Okay. It was not my first time. This is only my second time. You say only second time. It's been out for 5 years. I've only seen it twice now, because this is not on my rewatch list.
No.
In the slightest.
No, it should not be.
In the slightest. So I didn't catch anything new. I didn't really want to rewatch this one for this, but we had to get the complete lore of this all. But let's get into that lore a little bit, right?
Right. So yeah, this one they introduced his truck comes back, right? And this is the first movie where we find out that he has booby traps in his truck.
Yep.
And boy, oh boy, do they really stress these booby traps in this truck. It's like I don't know, 5 or 6 different scenes revolve around booby traps in this stupid truck. So he has got like this spike gate in the back. He's got a spike under the seat in the front. He's got like these little like roller ball things that explode.
Yep.
But somehow those rollerball things have like their own will.
Yep.
Like they can stop and turn and aim themselves. And I don't get it. That was just stupid to me, but they can do that. He's got the harpoon that shoots out of the freaking
tailgate. Yeah.
We're going to that. He's got like all these new weapons, right? He's got that one spear that he throws that's like obviously very intricately carved. It looks very old.
Right.
But it's kind of similar to that scrimshaw dagger that he had in the second one. So is the harpoon that comes out of the exhaust vent. It's got like this long like scrimshaw, like fancy carved handle on it.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, again, they go more into like, yeah, he's got, hobbies where he tinkers, makes his own weapons and kind of thing. But again, some of them, they made him just really stupid, which I didn't understand
all this
why.
Free time he has.
Right. Yeah. But again, like the truck like drove itself when he was on top of it. I mean, it's again, they never alluded to the fact that like this truck was sentient before. They never alluded to the fact that like his weapons or whatever were their own beings. I mean, that's what they're acting like. It's bizarre.
Well, do you think the lore was that everything that he has is an extension of himself?
I mean, that's possible, but then like you look at all the stuff hanging up in the truck, it was just a bunch of pitchforks and knives and like paint scrapers. I mean, it was just that stuff. Like, I'm sure he used it at some point. That stuff didn't look like it had any power.
I'm wondering because, kind of also part of the lore they established was he was able to sense his old hand from 23 years ago, which he never seemed to care about his old body parts. Like,
no, I mean, especially considering he tore off his own head and threw it away.
Right.
Like,
and then all of a sudden that they're able to grab a piece of him and then understand him, which did nothing. We don't see what they saw. They just went into this catatonic state. And then what? We don't really know. So they tried expanding the lore, telling us zero of it.
Yeah. And again, I mean, that's interesting if it's going in a direction, if you know where it's going. But again, knowing how the rest of this movie treated the kind of stuff that was going on, I know they didn't have a purpose or a path to follow to make that make sense. They just put it in there as, little nuggets to keep you interested. And to be fair, that part was fine with me. It was the rest of the stupid stuff that was not.
Right.
Like the sentient truck that can somehow like defend itself. It was like, the Batmobile in like the 1989 Batman, where he puts it in like defense mode or whatever that it was, where it like fights people by itself. It was like that.
Right.
It was just very stupid.
Now, like I said, this was what I'm thinking about. Maybe like the intricately carved stuff is parts of his old body, and I can see him maybe having like a hive mind with it, not with a truck, but with other stuff that might be made from parts of him. I mean, in my head, maybe that's what they are. They're just parts of him because he's able to like sense them. And let's face it, when he chopped the sheriff in half with his axe, he was still in the sky and called his axe back to him by sheer willpower, like Thor with Mjolnir. And like, I'm like, what just happened?
Mjolnir,
I'm like, what just happened? What did I see?
Again, it's like, I really feel like in this one, like, I don't know, he felt like, I think he could feel like he wasn't going to be able to make anymore.
Yeah.
And he just decided to Mary Sue the shit out of the Creeper.
Oh, yeah.
He just decided to give the Creeper all the powers he can possibly think of to make it even more invincible and badass, is I think what happened. So he gave him like this, sentient, like, Batmobile truck. And now he has, like, telekinetic powers, to be able to guide his weapons and shit, whatever. I don't know what the hell was going on in half this stuff.
Right. Like I said, I can see it if it was a part of him, part of a hive mind. I could go with that if that was ever explained to be the case. With that, I could take that part of it. Now, weirdly, we still have kind of psychicness with the grandma who's able to see her dead son, and once again, the psychic aspect of it is kind of coming into play, right? There's psychic links that people have in this world on top of the Creeper, right? I don't understand the purpose of the grandma being able to do that, other than maybe she had it 23 years ago, but to talk to her dead son and see visions of him and communicate with him, other than getting the hand, not much of a purpose. Like this was no expedition dump. I can see them holding onto the hand and having like a fuzzy montage of things in the past. Like if we were able to see what they saw, I can see that be the expedition dump that we normally would get, but we got zero. And the lore was he just, stopped chasing them because they knew what he was. But then the next night he's going after the school bus. Like, they didn't have anything to do with that. They got that knowledge. It didn't do anything for him. So why did he ever stop? going after them.
Yeah. And you'd think if, like, you know, it's like, you know, small town, rural America, right?
Right.
Like, if, like, I don't know, 50 to 100 people got murdered in your town, do you really think your high school team would be going to play a game?
Right. No.
You know what I mean? Like, the next day? I mean, come on. There's no way in hell that would ever happen.
Correct.
I mean, whenever a big event happens in a small town, the shit shuts down for like a month.
Right, because everyone's a suspect.
Right. So, yeah, there's so many things that just don't make sense in this movie, but yeah.
So, highlights. Are there any highlights for you in this movie?
Okay. Now, like I said, the highlight is it's that double-edged sword that I talked about earlier. Is they take the one step forward and two steps back with his his weapons and stuff. Like I said, that was the thing I liked about the second one is they gave you a little bit of like, okay, you know, there's more to them, right? And then this one they do the same thing. There's some interesting elements there, but again, they took those two steps back and made them stupid. But there is still, I would say, that one step forward that they took is probably the best part of this movie. I know that isn't saying much, but I really feel like that's the best part of this movie is that little bit of extra lore that we get.
Right. I mean, for a highlight, yeah, I would absolutely have to agree with you on that. For a highlight, there's not much going for this movie. He didn't need to be overpowered more so than what he already was. He was already pretty invincible. Let's get into low points. I'm gonna go first on that one. The biggest low point for me was, you know, the need to tie this into 1 and 2. It didn't have to be. It didn't have to take place also in 2001. I don't think it did any justice. I don't think there was any purpose for it. It didn't need to tie anything. Like, we're pulling in a Final Destination, 5 with this, that it all links back to the first one. At that point, low point also was just the sheriff, right? He was supposed to be this hunter that knew his enemy, right? He knew all the stuff, and his elite force was just garbage. And I know that happens a lot in horror movies or action movies, but once again, we had, you know, I'd say subversion of expectations, where we get the was it Duke in Jason Goes to Hell, that knew all about the Voorhees and, you know, ends up dying anyway. We kind of had that with the sheriff.
Well, it was like, yeah, that entire team, they all just died. I think the only guy that survived was Hair Plugs.
Right. And then kind of last low point would be him shouting in anger or frustration and then killing all the crows around him. And just his, air quotes, defeat at the end of this movie.
Right.
What about low points?
Yeah, it wasn't a defeat. He was just like, I think he was just pissed off.
Yeah. What about low points for you?
Low points of this movie, number one, is the effects are terrible. I mean, terrible. I mean, again, you know, my gripe, I talked about that gun earlier. That's not how those guns fire. It just is a huge miss to show all the barrels shooting at once. It's just, you know, ignorance, stupidity. Just doesn't make any sense. And it's all CGI. They're not actually shooting anything. It's all CGI. And the CGI is horrible. They show like explosions when those stupid little spike globes come out of the super truck, right?
Yep.
And they blow up. That's like the worst explosion effects I've ever seen. I think like the default Apple movie stuff is better than that. It was horrible. Like they showed like crows sometimes, like the one crow that landed on the railing that they kind of did like a close up to. That CGI was so stiff and rough. I mean, you could tell that thing was a CGI from like halfway across the room.
For a 2017 movie? Yeah.
Yeah, it was horrible. The point, like, he doesn't really, I mean, he flies in this movie, but they don't show him flying. I think because they didn't have the money to show that effect. But the one time they did show his wings come out, they were CGI. It was so bad that they were literally stuck on the frame.
Yeah.
So, like, there's things moving around him, and the wings stayed in place. They were, like, some of the worst effects I have ever seen.
You're talking about his like, downhill pursuit to the sheriff shooting him with the gun?
Yeah. Yeah, those wings came out, and they were literally frozen in place for multiple frames to where the rest of the body was moving, and things were moving in the background, and those wings stayed exactly in place. They never moved.
Correct.
So like he didn't have enough money to animate the wings just to put them there.
Right.
Yeah, those effects, they were so bad. I think that was by far the thing that distracted me the most with this movie. But I mean, again, it was just those stupid missteps with, the lore, like making the truck like sentient,
right.
just so stupid to me. Like this fucking harpoon that shot out of the exhaust pipe that can somehow like aim, like it hit the kid on the dirt bike like a mile away.
Correct.
Like, what? How is that possible? Like it can only shoot one straight direction. The truck didn't move.
Correct.
I mean, it just, and then it has like a winch to like rewind it somehow. I mean, there's so many dumb things.
I mean, it explains why he doesn't have to do upkeep on the truck because it does it itself.
Yeah. Apparently, it's like a transformer and just rebuilds itself.
All right.
Yeah, I don't understand.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the worst for me. The effects are just terrible.
Well, it takes place in 2001, so we have 2001 effects.
Right.
All right. So, dare I ask, number creeper throwing stars out of 10 on this one? We have
this one I will give. I was going to give it lower, but the next one on the list made it shine just a little bit more. So I'm going to say this one has, I'm going to give it 4 out of 10 creeper throwing stars. It was originally going to be a 3, but again, because the other one is bad enough to lift it up that one more number, it gets a 4.
I'm going to 3. I'm sticking with 3 for me. Yeah. That was, like I said, it's number 3 and deserves 3. That's as far as I can go with that. Like, it's just, I can't rewatch it again. I don't think I can, unless it's a Rift Tracks or MST3K.
Right,
it's that bad.
Yeah, I mean, I had to focus hard to not just start doing something else while because that's what I do when I'm watching a movie that I don't like. I just start doing something else, and I have the stack of books on my coffee table, and I was staring at them the whole time, like I just want to start looking through these books. But yeah, I didn't. I focused on the movie, and I'm not really happy.
I started watching it last night about 10 o'clock, and I was getting ready for bed, and the wife's like, "We can continue watching." I'm like, "I'm just going to go to sleep if we're in bed watching Jeepers Creepers. I'm just going to go to sleep and forget about it completely." So I'm like, "No, I gotta turn it off, pick it up this morning, and sit down and just watch it." Like, I went into my office and watched it on my computer just because I couldn't be in a room with the birds or the dog or anything else to distract me. Not like my office doesn't have lots of distractions anyway. But I'm like, all right, headphones on. I'm not focusing on anything else. I got another 60 minutes of this crap to get through.
Oh man, it's so rough. Yeah, I had to stop halfway through and go walk the dog because I had to keep myself awake. I was having a hard time staying awake. Oh man. But yeah. Okay, so the next movie is Jeepers Creepers Reborn, which is not the same writer and director as the first 3. It's some new folks. Yeah.
It's the start of a new trilogy. Start of a new trilogy, right?
Here's the start of this movie. I got about 10 minutes into the movie before I had to pause it and go get a drink to try to make this movie better. Like, that's okay. I'm going to just start with that. Anyway, so the plot for this movie is the very, very beginning is essentially like a weird retelling of the first movie, like the very first part of the first movie with them driving past the church and the bodies being thrown in the thing, but like done with like 2 older people, right? Like elderly, like senior citizens. And the acting is atrocious. And I was like, is the whole movie going to be like this? And then you find out later that it was like he was watching like a reenactment on like an unsolved mysteries thing. Right? Like, okay, so it's not going to be that bad. Now, he's in a car with his girlfriend. His name is Chase, and I think her name is Lane.
Yeah, Lane. Yep.
Okay, so I think the guy is just a big porn fan.
Chasey Lane.
And he likes Casey Lane, and so he named one person Case and one person Lane. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, so like they're going to like it sounds like they're going away for a romantic weekend, and you find out as you're going along it's not what it is at all.
Or a hound.
Yeah, right. But at this point, this is when I realized, oh no, the acting just is this bad in this movie, and that's when I had to pause it and go get a drink.
You're expecting a guy with a trench coat to come out these scenes,
right? It was, oh man, okay. So they're, you think they're going on this romantic weekend thing, and it turns out they're not. He's bringing her to like this middle of nowhere horror convention, right? That's what it seems like. It's called like Horror
Hound in Louisiana.
Yeah, in Louisiana. They do actually mention where they are.
Yes.
So they're going to this horror convention. I feel bad for her. Like, he just seems like a guy who does not give a shit what she wants at all, and is just planning everything that he wants to do and just assuming that she's going to go along with it. Because she's like resistant to just about everything that he suggests, and he just convinces her to do it anyway.
Yes.
So like, she's in a bad relationship, and I feel bad because then she's pregnant, right? It's like one of the first things you find out. She's pregnant. I'm like, great. She's pregnant with this guy that just sucks.
And
right?
what's he gonna?
And then
what's he gonna do?
Yeah, and then now he's gonna propose to her. I'm like, oh, this is the start of a horrible relationship. Like, this needs to stop. Like, I was like, I hope the creeper comes in and kills one of them like fast, because I don't want to. This is hurting me.
Yeah.
So they're driving. They get to they get lost in the middle of nowhere, of course. So they go off in this weird like voodoo store to ask for directions. And they get directions, and then the girlfriend gets like a weird vision from the lady, like some kind of weird like cult gathering, right? That's all you really.
She touches the map, or she touches the map, or touches the lady.
She touches she goes to grab the map,
right.
and of course she like weirdly touches her hands out of whatever. It doesn't make sense why it happens. It's just, this is what happens.
Yes.
So she gets this weird vision of like cult people, but that's it. And they leave. They go to this like very lavish, extravagant hotel in the middle of nowhere.
One thing first, though, is the store owner, after they leave, calls somebody.
Oh yeah,
and says
she pulls out like this hotline phone.
Yeah, we got one bird in the oven or something like that. Something like that.
She's got like one bird in the nest or some stupid shit. Whatever.
Okay, go on.
So they go to this like lavish hotel in the middle of nowhere. And again, I just feel so bad for her, because he's like, she's like, oh, what are we gonna do? And he's like, oh, I know what we're gonna do. And he starts pulling out all this cosplay stuff. And he's like, I figured we'd do some cosplay. And I'm like, okay, maybe they're into that kind of thing. And she's like, immediately, no. Right? It's like not even like, oh, come on. No, it's like, she's like, no, like, this is not happening.
Right.
And he just like, oh, well, I just really kind of want to. He starts whining and crying. And then finally she's like, okay, fine. Right. So she grabs all the stuff, goes in the other room. I thought he was going to do it too. No, he sits in a chair and puts his feet up and then turns on the TV. Like, I expected him to crack a beer. Right. Yeah. I mean, just like your typical chauvinistic dickhead. And so she's like, there's this montage where she's like getting dressed up in all these different cosplay things. He's like, oh yeah, that's great. Never gets up off his ass. Just watching TV the whole time. I was like, I feel so bad for her in this situation.
Well, just think that her girlfriends of the 80s montage dressing like just shaking their heads. No.
Right. It was, yeah. So then, like, okay, she does like the sexy Freddy Krueger. She did like the Harley Quinn. And then she decides on this last one. I don't even know what she was supposed to be. Do you know what she was supposed to be?
She reminds me of, what's her name? From Orphan. An Orphan First Kill. She reminds me of the little girl from Orphan.
But then she'd have pigtails. She didn't have pigtails. She had like weird slicked back hair.
Yeah.
And then like a white dress with like black stripes on it. I was like, I don't know where this is from. I was like,
sworn's from Orphan. You also missed the sexy Edward Scissorhands.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did forget about the sexy Edward Scissorhands. But I just could not believe the dude was just sitting there like it was his idea, and he just sitting. Anyway,
in fairness, he gets blown afterwards too.
Of course he does. I mean, he's that kind of asshole.
Right.
Anyway, I don't know why she's like staying with the dude. She should have just been like, go on your fucking horror convention by yourself.
And what was he gonna wear?
The same shit he came in with.
A shirt. He had a shirt. He had a shirt on.
Yeah, that was the shirt he was already wearing. Like, what a dick. You know, and she's asking him, like, oh, what are you going to wear? Like, I was like, okay, now we're going to get him dressing up, right? Nope. No, I'm wearing this shirt. Let's go. You know, I was like, oh, this guy is ridiculous. So they get to this like horror convention, which is unlike any horror convention I've ever been to. I've been to a few, and they don't have like DJs with like playing like DJs playing like, what was it? Like trip hop, and like dubstep. And I'm like, no, this is not any horror convention.
With real vinyls, as a good DJ has.
Okay, no. You're missing the best part. Playing music, they're all partying and stuff, right? And then like, yeah, well, this is later on, but I'm going to bring it up now. You know, something happens to like knock out. It's looked like the power, but the power was still on. And then he goes, oh no, the Wi-Fi's out and the music stops. What kind of idiot is streaming music as a DJ? At least download it to your device first. Jesus Christ.
It's 2022.
What an idiot. Yeah. And then he goes, don't worry, I have a backup vinyl. He puts on the vinyl. It's literally the same fucking song that was already playing. It's not even a different song. And it's, every time they show the people partying, it's the same song playing. So they could only afford one party dubstep song, and they just kept playing it over and over and over again. Anyway, there's like, how many people at this convention? Like 50?
Yeah.
There's not a lot of people, even when they're supposed to be like in a big crowd. It's like, it looks like it's sparse. I mean, it looks like there's 20 people there.
Yeah.
I would say like in total, there's maybe 50 people at this giant horror convention.
Yep.
So anyway, yeah, they're getting there, and the guy is doing his typical shit where he's like, you know, going up and buying a chicken leg, and she's like, oh, what do I get? And he's like, oh, you can go get some fries, or, you know what? I mean, just, the guy is just an asshole. So like they're going around and he's doing whatever the hell he wants, and she's just kind of tagging along. And they go to what, like this it's kind of like, instead of like to throw the baseball at the milk cartons, it's like a
sharp objects.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's called Sharp Attack.
Sharp Attack.
Was the name of it.
Yeah, that's it.
But it was, they're throwing creeper throwing stars at like a mannequin. Right. So, you know, he throws them, and, you know, of course he misses. And then she throws them, of course she's like dead on, right? You know, perfect aim.
Yep.
So, so anyway, so they go back, and of course they there's this weird scene where they show the backstage where the lady that was at the voodoo shop is now like, you know, one of the people that run this horror convention. And so she goes in the back, and she goes in like the lottery raffle thing. She dumps out all the names, and she puts in her own names.
Yeah.
And then she goes out there. The creeper is back at this point. Like they show him like crawling out of the ground. And at first they show him crawling out of the ground, and I was like, these are the worst effects I've ever seen. I can literally see the person moving underneath these prosthetics.
Yes.
It was so bad. But then like actually he like broke out of the cocoon thing. It was supposed to be like that because it was supposed to be like he was molting or something. But even after he molted, they were still horrible effects. So it was like horrible effects breaking out of even worse effects. So it was like, yeah, you should have had another cocoon you break out and having like some decent effects because you look like shit. So anyway, the creeper is back at this point. The creeper has his old truck. This is the same truck as from the first three. It's not the same creeper. He doesn't look the same.
No.
I mean, he looks similar, but he does not look the same at all. It's a totally different feature.
Yes.
And then like, yeah, he finds his truck, and then he finds a scarecrow, and he puts on the scarecrow outfit, so he looks exactly the same as the guy from the first three. He's got the trench coat and the hat.
Right.
Then he kills one of the people that run the festival. They don't really show it happening. They show him like running in the forest, and then they show like a generic kind of like he gets hooked, like gets hung up on a tree or something, then a meat hook or some shit. And then that's it. But then so now they go to this big raffle, and like I said, the big raffle where everybody's supposed to be in the same room. There's never more than like 20 people on the camera at one time. So it looks like there's only like 50 people total at this whole event. Anyway, so of course they call out the number, and of course it's them that win because the lady rigged it.
Right.
You know? So they're the bird in the nest or whatever she said earlier.
Yeah.
So and their prize is they win a escape room
Creeper.
a creeper themed escape room thing, right? Yep. And you leave immediately, which doesn't make any sense. Like if you win a prize, like you can't just like say it's happening right now, because I mean you probably have plans. Like you don't You don't just like go to a convention like, oh, I'm planning on winning the raffle, so I'm not going to plan on anything after this certain point in the night. No, of course not. They didn't even know that the raffle was there until they got there. So like everything they had planned for the rest of the night just goes out the window. But anyway, so they go on this horror themed or this creeper themed escape room, and there's like a Hollywood producer guy, like the camera talent. She's like kind of reminded me of like an influencer type
I'm pretty
person.
sure she's an influencer. Yes.
Yeah, she's like an influencer type person. So her producer guy, her camera guy, the redneck dude who is supposed to like guide them to the thing, and then Chase and Lane.
Yeah, the guy that ran the sharp attack.
Right. Yeah, the redneck dude that's supposed to lead them to is the same guy that did the sharp attack.
Yeah.
Right. So they all go to this like escape room thing. So they get to this room. The camera guy dies before they even get in the building.
Yes.
Like he can't get his camera to work. He goes over somewhere and he sees like one of the people that run the horror thing, they said she was like Miss Universe or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, well, anyway, she was like just a lady in black outfit. And she like goes into like this, they're in a graveyard, of course. So she goes into like one of the tombs, then he follows her and then dies. They just show like blood dripping all over his camera. Dead.
Right.
So they're all like, oh, where's the camera guy? Oh, I don't know. Well, we got to go do this escape room thing anyway. So they just, they kind of try moving. And then at this point, the creeper comes in and just like bizarrely grabs Lane, right? And just disappears. It's like a ridiculous scene. It actually made me laugh when it happened. It was not scary at all. It was ridiculous. He just like appeared, grabbed her, and then just like teleported away.
Yes.
So he comes running, screaming that, oh, she's missing. We have to go find her. And so their, idea to deal with the problem is to go into the escape room house. I don't know how. I think they like, oh, maybe she's in the house. So they all go in the house, even though they find the dead cameraman outside on their way into the house. So they know that people are dead. And then the thing, it made me laugh again. Okay. The dude went up to the body and was like, oh, this is still fresh.
Yep.
No shit. You just saw this guy 5 minutes ago. Like he died within the last 5 minutes. Of course it's fresh, you moron. I mean, yeah, there's so many lines like that in this movie where I'm just yelling at the screen. It's just so stupid. So anyway, they find his body. They go into this house because that's their solution to finding his girlfriend, is to go into the escape room somehow. Right. So they get locked in. Do they? Yeah, I think they show the people. So it's like Voodoo Lady, the weird Miss Universe lady, and then like some other cloaked people. They don't really show who they are. But they don't really matter. So they like lock them in this house, so they can't get out. So they try to get out. Of course, they can't. And so they start accusing the redneck dude of locking them in. Like, oh, this is the start of the escape room. Like, we want out. And he's like, what the fuck? There's like dead people. Why? Like, I don't want to be here any more than you do. So they're all like accusing him. So the boyfriend Chase accuses him. The Hollywood guy starts accusing him. And then he like pulls out a gun.
Well, he says that I was only supposed to bring you here and scare you and then leave.
Right.
So
right.
He was instilling the fear for the pheromones to start flowing.
Apparently.
I think that's what they were trying to get at.
Yeah, well, whatever. So yeah, he pulls out a gun. He's like, "Get the fuck away from me!" The boyfriend still tries to rush at him anyway. He shoots up in the air. Everybody like stops and freaks out. And then at that point is when they start. They hear a scream, or they hear something, and they go to investigate. And then that's where the creeper pops out for the first time. Yep. And of course, the redneck dude just starts shooting at the creeper, and of course, nothing happened. Oh wait, no. I'm sorry, I forgot about another character. When she's runs out of the car to puke because she's pregnant, where I said earlier they found out she's pregnant. We find out she's pregnant because she runs out of the car and throws up. And of course, that means you're pregnant. Right. Whenever a woman throws up, they're pregnant. Right. So after she's done puking, she calls her friend who is supposed to meet her at the hotel, who is driving a Corvette through a swamp.
Yes.
Which is stupid. But anyway, he's like, oh, I had to stop. I had to pull over to go take a leak. I'll meet you at the hotel. And of course, the creeper gets him.
Well, because he walked a mile from his car to go pee.
Yeah, he did. I'm like, dude, you're alone. There's no one anywhere near you. Why are you running in the woods? Just piss next to your car.
Right.
But anyway, so they find his dead body hanging at that, and they're like, oh no. And that's when the creeper comes out. He shoots at the creeper. He shoots all his bullets at the creeper. I think he hits him in the hand and damages his hand, and they all run away. And so the creeper, grabs his own arm, tears it off, and then it grabs the arm off of the friend who's hanging from the ceiling and just eats it, and then grows a new hand.
Yes.
And they show that's the same thing they did with the head in the second one, where they show the hand come in as it was, and then it just instantly transitions into a creeper hand. And then it's just kind of like cat and mouse through the house. We do find the Lane has been tied to like a weird ritual sacrifice table.
Yes.
Kind of thing. And it's hilarious because if you look at the ropes that are holding her, they're not even tied. They're just looped around her hands. I mean, she could have literally just, flopped her hand over and she would have been free. It was just so badly done. But anyway, so she finds a knife on the table. She manages to cut the rope and get away. The knife, when that was on the table, the creeper tried to stab her with, but when everybody else got into he did stab her. She was bleeding. She's not badly, but bleeding enough. And so that's when everybody else came in the house. So he left to go take care of them. And then that's when she got the knife and cut herself free. And then she's like, escaping through the house. So it's like cat and mouse to the house. They're trying to hide from the creeper, blah, blah, blah. They meet up with the girlfriend. And then they're all, trying to run around the house. There's various things where they're meeting up with the creeper and they're running away, stupid stuff. They find, this room that's like a weird kind of like a ritual room.
Shrine.
It's like a shrine. And it's like a bunch of weird stuff. There is like one callback to the original movie when they show like a voodoo doll of what Justin Long's character was wearing in the movie, like that yellow T-shirt and stuff with the
rose
band, and I think it was band
with the rose tattoo.
So that was right. That was like the only real like tie back they had, other than the creeper itself. And the truck is the same, even though the truck was like not really even driven. It was just shown.
Right.
Oh no, sorry. It was driven to take out the Wi-Fi. That was the only time they drove.
Yes.
So they find this shrine. They find out that, it appears that these people are like helping him in some way, shape, or form. There's like a weird like ritual stone. They move the stone. There's all kinds of like dead bodies in this like sewer basement thing. And then that's where all this blood that's like dripping from the ceiling from like his ritual table is going. So it looks like these people have been like doing ritual murders to like feed him.
Right.
Or something. I mean, they didn't really get too into it, but that's what's going on. There's a bunch of creepy, weird voodoo stuff. I mean, lots of dead bodies under there. So this has been going on for a while. Blah blah blah. And then so they're going back and forth. The influencer ends up dying. Hollywood ends up dying. And then they come up with a plan to like, I don't understand this plan. I don't get, like, they don't say what this plan is. They just say they have a plan. This plan makes zero sense. Their plan is somehow to run around the house making a bunch of noise so that the creeper finds you, and then trying to run back to the front door where Lane, the girlfriend, is sitting with a knife. And supposedly he's supposed to be distracted by her, and she's supposed to lead him outside. And then the people that originally, led him to the front door are supposed to go up to the roof and take off the weather vane and throw it down on him. Okay. How the hell would they even know there was a fucking weather vane up there?
Or how he get up to it.
Right.
Yes. It was the redneck again, and the boyfriend left. Yeah.
Right. So but so your plan is to throw this invincible creature at a woman who's already been stabbed by him once, and somehow hope that she can keep him busy for minutes while you climb up to the roof and somehow tear off a weather vane and throw it down with perfect accuracy to hit him with it.
Well, in fairness, did stab him in both his ears with his own throwing stars, and then pulled a Donald Pleasance Jamie Lee Curtis two perfect shots into his eyes with the throwing stars.
Yes. And says the classic line, "How do you like those peepers, bitch?" I mean, dude, I almost just shut it off. I was like, I was cringing so hard that I think I almost like imploded. It was, oh my God, it was so bad. The ending made
And what happened with Creeper at the end?
He like got eaten by crows, and then the crows like all flew away, and then they went back to like the weird voodoo people, and then the crows like vomited him back up, and he became another creeper, but he was like somehow lighter colored.
Mm-hmm. Well, because one of the crows was white.
Well, that's true. One crow out of the hundreds of crows was a white crow.
Yes.
Yeah. But again, the CGI was terrible.
I mean,
but yeah, that's
this is our first thoughts, first watch. Obviously, we heard this burst them into the plot.
Oh yeah, I put my first thoughts into my plot description because I could not separate them because they're so ridiculous and stupid. So yeah, go ahead.
This is the first watch. First thoughts was this is, it to me it is a trope, and I'm not gonna bash anyone's fan fiction, but this seems like someone who created a movie of their own that was fan fiction based off of their favorite slasher killer. And don't get me wrong, some of them are amazing. I love Freddy versus the Ghostbusters and Return of the Ghostbusters and stuff like that, right? That came out, 12 years ago, 13 years ago. But there's people that do really great justice. There's people that do shorts with, Jason and Freddy and all that stuff. A lot of Halloween stuff. But the trope is horror conventions, right? It's like you made this movie about your icon and you have it take place at a horror convention, then in turn show this movie at a horror convention. That's what it feels like when I was watching this. It felt like,
well, and again, it's like displaying a horror convention by someone who's never been to a horror convention.
Correct.
Is that like he made it look like a rave / carnival, yes. Which is not how a horror convention is at all.
Yeah, this. Like in my head, this is not part of the canon. I hope it's not. I hope this is not a Star Wars new trilogy. They need to wipe the slate clean after this. That was my first thought. My second thought was, I'm never going to watch this again.
Yeah. I had to convince myself to watch it the first time. I was like, can I just pretend I watched it? It won't really matter. I'll just say it's bad.
Right. So yeah, that was let's get into the lore. Because there's a lot more lore in this. Yeah.
I mean, but again, the lore is not really about the creeper, though. The lore is about these cult people that somehow know about the creeper and assist him.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that going on. Of course, they get away at the end. I mean, of course, the creeper technically survives at the end. But yeah, I mean, there is lore, but it has nothing to do with the creeper. The creeper is exactly the way he was in the other movies, only he's got a worse costume, worse effects.
Right.
I mean, worse prosthetics. I mean, everything is bad about him. His teeth are so bad that they never move. I think he moves his lips over the teeth one time, and it looks like it hurts.
Right. I mean, obviously they're dentures, but almost it's just like a mask instead of molded and contoured into the guy playing him, right? We had the same guy, I think, in all the first three. Didn't come back for this, and it just seemed like it was just a mask that you can't move.
Right. Yeah, it was just it was like a Halloween mask. I mean, it was like a good Halloween mask, but it was still a Halloween mask. It didn't move. Right. It was just there.
Right. It's almost like I was expecting to see his real teeth behind the fake teeth at some point in the movie. Is that bad? Right. Lore wise, I think they completely did disservice to the first three. The way it always seemed, especially, we never find out that this is Louisiana. It's supposed to be any town, Farmville, USA. We get told it's Louisiana. Okay. And then to say that the creeper needs followers that he needs people to continue his longevity, I don't think it added. I think it really took a lot away. That he needed all this help this entire time. Like it took away that element of it.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, yeah, because in the first three, he was totally like, capable of dealing with anything by himself.
Correct.
Like he didn't. There was no help that he needed at all.
Right.
I mean, like he made his own weapons. He had his own way of doing things. He was able to, harvest and eat people and shit all by himself. Never needed any help in any form whatsoever. And this one, it seems like he's just like a tool for the cult people.
This is the curse of Michael Myers, or in the franchises. This movie right here, where we have, I wouldn't say too much lore, but it's just like there's a cult, because that's we have in Halloween 6, is that drives this, and that they couldn't do all this stuff without him, and he's just he's a tool at that point in time. I think it really took away, and then all of a sudden he has this ability to whistle and like make people stun.
Okay, I had a hard time figuring out what the hell he was doing, because that mask, and like I said, he never moves his lips, and his teeth just his mouth just stays in that one position the whole time. So it's like he just like put his hand in front of his face, and then like a weird sound came out, and I'm like, what the hell is happening? And I didn't realize until later on when he pulled his hand away that he was doing like the whistle move. Like while it was happening, I had no clue what was actually going on. It took me a second to like process. Oh, I think it was supposed to be a whistle.
Now you could argue that this was an evolution of him screaming in anger and killing all the crows around him from number 3 at the end. So maybe there's something vocally that he doesn't speak. Maybe he is Black Bolt in a way, right? We got him with Mjolnir and be able to call back his axe in number 3. Maybe he's pulling a Black Bolt at this point in time.
Yeah, well, yeah, he's turning into a DC character where they just keep picking up new powers all the time with no explanation as to how they get them. They just have them.
Right, and once again, though, with Lane, we have psychic visions coming into this play again, right? So we really have psychic visions across the entire spectrum, along with the Creeper. It's just a different person every time that has psychic abilities, which we generally get once in a horror franchise. So it's psychic ability is not, granted, it's a different person every time, but it's still, like I said, I think they demystified a lot with the lore of what we established as the Creeper, that he was this lone wolf able to do all this stuff, to just throw a cult in that worships him on top of it. That's kind of weird. It's also weird is that I guess they never say when the first one takes place, but they explicitly say this is like 2021 in this movie.
No, the first one they do say when it takes place, kind of in an off-key way. They don't say this is 2001, but they do say, the lady says that it happens every 23 years. Right. And the last time those two people, remember when he found those two people in the basement, he said it was 1978. Right. Which means 23 years after 1978 means it's 2001.
But 23 years after 2001 is still 2 years away.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. If they're actually going to have a real revival for this series, it needs to be in 2024, because then that will be exactly 23 years after the first movie, just like the cycle goes. I don't know why this movie didn't wait until 2024 to at least play on that. I'm glad it didn't, because this one was horrible. Right. So I hope that they do like another. They could just do a sequel to 3. I mean, if they really wanted to, or they could just do like a soft reboot. Yes. So we're like, technically those happened, but maybe something, whatever. But they have 2024 is when they should come out with a better.
Well, one. I mean, this was the reboot. It's called Reborn. He's reborn 23 years later. And they could have even tied it in that he was crawling off the wall from the farm in number 2. They could have said that. They could have said this was 2024. They said it's 2021. They explicitly stated in the movie, which is not right. Just in the can't. Just in the can't.
Doesn't know how to count.
Unless, let's think about this. It's a different Creeper.
I mean, it's possible, but I mean, the likelihood that he has the same exact truck.
Who knows? It's such a weird.
Unless they came from like they're aliens from outer space and their spaceship is disguised as that truck.
So Jeepers 5 confirmed in space. Got it. That's the next logical.
I mean, most
that's
likely
the next logical
yeah,
step in this franchise is space.
Right. Yeah, might as well. Creeper in space.
Right.
That would be funny because then he would like go out in the vacuum of space and then like his whole body would die, right? And then he'd just eat a whole person and then just be revived.
Exactly.
Problem solved.
He's up there snacking on George Clooney.
We can only hope.
Were there any highlights of this movie?
Highlights in this movie, I mean, really no. I mean, I was trying hard to think of something like that could like be good in this, and there's really just not. I mean, there's nothing in this movie that I was interested in.
So this is my highlight. Are you ready for this? Mm-hmm. It is all the discount knockoff horror costumes they have, because they have a cosplay showing at this horror convention, right? Which they do,
right.
But it's always the knockoff, like burnt man finger knives guy, right? Right,
or Beetle Johnson,
or Nickel Dumb the Clown.
Okay, there's a highlight. There was a guy just like Beetlejuice, and his Beetlejuice costume was pretty average. I mean, it was decent, but it was pretty average. But there was a guy in the background, out of focus, that was actually dressed as Alec Baldwin when he stuck his hand through his head and stretched his face all out. That looked pretty good.
Right.
So I'll give you that would be my highlight. But again, the Gina Davis character wasn't there. It was just him by himself, which was funny. But that one looked pretty good.
Instead Edward Scissorhands, Ned, the sheer fingers.
Right. And there was so many just like generic horror character number 3. Like, okay, I can tell you're supposed to be a scary character, but who knows what the fuck you're supposed to be.
But I mean, that to me was the highlight, because they're trying to show, it's that classic thing they do in horror movies where like you show other posters or stuff from other horror movies and say, hey, I'm scarier than you. We had that feud with, Sam Raimi and Wes Craven, right? That we got every once in a while. But I think that was them trying to say in their own way that, hey, we're scarier. We have this new bad that's scarier than all these other people that we are dressing up as. I can see that being the case.
I hope if this is what they came out with to do that with, you failed miserably, dude.
All right.
Or how about the DJ? What was he? Was he supposed to? He looked like a lizard zombie.
He looked like
I don't know what he was trying to do.
He looked like a voodoo zombie.
Well, he was all green, right? He was like covered in like greens paint, and then he had like weird like gold lines all over him. Like I said, it looked kind of like scales. So he looked like a lizard man zombie. Right. But again, that's what most of these characters are. They're just like generic-y, like horror-ish characters. They're trying very hard to not be individual characters.
All right, low points other than the entire movie.
Low points other than the entire movie. I mean, the effects, again. This one is just, they're so bad. The creeper effects are terrible. Like I said, the mask is bad. His teeth are bad. His hat and his coat look like they're made out of garbage bags. I mean, they're terrible, man. I mean, at least in the other one, they were just like ratty looking, cloth. They look like they were supposed to look. This, it looks like they literally made it out of garbage bags. I mean, the effects are so terrible. The CGI was horrible. I mean, like the crows looked ridiculous. Yes. I mean, everything just looked so stupid. I mean, it was, again, 3, you could tell that they didn't have a whole lot of budget and they were trying to do what they could. It still sucked, but at least they were doing something. This one, it doesn't look like they had an excuse. They just were lazy.
Right. It really reminds me of a horror movie that I would try to create myself. That's basically
right. Yeah. It looks like, this is like something you could do and like, Apple movie with like a Halloween mask. It's like essentially what they made. And like an old beat down house that you can like punch holes in the walls.
So that's why it just reminds me of just poorly done fan fiction.
Yeah.
You know,
No.
I can make costumes. What do you got? Garbage bags.
Right, exactly. You got garbage bags. And a green goblin.
No,
mask.
there is a Jeepers Creepers mask. So they probably bought the Jeepers Creepers mask from like a Spirit Halloween for this movie.
Right.
That's what it felt like. It felt like
I don't think he had the skullet in this one either. He didn't have that weird ratty white hair.
Well, that mask is 20 years old at this point, so it fell off. They couldn't refine the hair. They couldn't reglue it back on.
Probably.
For me, the low point, as you point out in the plot, is the boyfriend. Like he survived. He survived.
I know. He should have died, and then there would have been clapping in the theater.
Right. He survived, and he's still going to carry on that terrible relationship with this girl.
I know, and he's going to try to propose to her.
Yeah.
I just feel bad like that. It's like this relationship needs to end. These people are terrible.
All right, so number of creeper throwing stars, and we'll say the scale is 0 to 10. We'll add a 0 in. What would you give it?
Okay. I mean, if there's a 0 and 0 is the absolute worst I can go, I will give it a 1. A 1 creeper throwing star out of 10, simply because I have seen worse movies, so I can't give it the absolute lowest score, but it is damn
It is
close.
no Mass of Hands of Fate, but it really tried to be. It
Right.
really tried to
Right.
be.
It did.
Yeah,
It
one.
did.
I'm giving it a 1 as well. It's just, I don't even know what to say about this franchise. Like, the first 2 were great, right? Let's kind of go over this franchise kind of as a whole, right? We have this franchise that's 4 deep. At that point in time, sometimes you're running out of steam, as they tend to, right? They need a revitalization. Do we wait another 20 years for this to get done properly? Are we that far out from this remake? Do you think we can get someone be more interested in this that likes the originals enough? Or do you think it's only the guy that can do it well?
I don't think it's necessarily only the guy, but I mean, if he made the first 3, I mean, it's kind of like after seeing what happens when he's not in control, I can see giving him maybe the budget of 2 to try to make another one. Again, 3 was terrible, I think, mostly because of the budget.
Right.
You could tell there was a lot of things cut. There's another scene. I just want to bring this up real quick. In Reborn, there was the scene where they go to the car, okay, and they're going to go in this van, this creepy conversion van with the redneck dude, right, and the influencer, and they're like, okay, come on, get in the van, and the girlfriend goes, like, this is the worst idea ever. Why would you ever get in that van?
That's how you get killed by hillbillies.
Right. And then it cuts away, and then she's running in the van. Like, I felt like there was a scene that was cut to where, like, somebody said something, or like she makes a decision or something. But like, how do you go from like being skeptical to like literally running and like to where your boyfriend is like trying to catch up to you? Like, it just went like. They're just a hard, bad cut. I mean,
you paint yourself in the corner, and to distract the person from watching you paint, you threw something against the wall and go, "Hey, look over there!"
Right. Again, it's just so. This movie is so jarring and just so doesn't make any fucking sense. Sorry,
that's all right. No. So, do we need the guy to come back? Right. Eventually, everyone seems to come back to their series that they create as a franchise. It feels like.
Mm-hmm.
Are we at that point because we already had such a horrible outing?
Well, usually like the people that make the first one, they usually, sometimes they'll come back for the second one, but they're never around after that, right? The franchise kind of moves on without them. They might, get a producer credit every now and again when they have to like ask them a question. Right. Or ask them for a prop that was in one of the other movies or something like that, right? So they get a producer credit out of it. But usually they're not all that involved. And then later on down the line, they'll get back involved again. This one, the first 3, the guy was like, he wrote and directed all 3 of them. Like he was all in with these movies.
Yeah.
And then, only 5 years later, you get this, horrible fucking pile of shit that is Reborn, right? I mean, that's gotta suck for him seeing that.
Star of new trilogy.
So, I mean, right. Yeah. So, like, at this point, I would say, try to, if you want to see this franchise move on, give that guy, again, not a good budget, but give him the budget of 2, at least where they had some effects, right? Give him the budget of 2, let him make a B horror movie, and then see how he does, right? See if it's any better than 3, because 3 was pretty bad.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, it was not nearly as bad as this one, but 3 wasn't bad. Let's see if he can. If he can't, then I think the franchise can just go away, or it could come back 23 years later.
Yes. David Gordon Green makes it after he does his next trilogy of The Exorcist. Let me revisit this in about 10 years. Let me go ahead and do that.
Again, like I said, let the guy who made the first 3, let him make this next one in 2024. So it'll be a full 23 years from the first one. And if he fails, then wait another 23 years and do it with somebody else.
Oh no. That's
fair.
Oh man. So that's we're thinking the next one, the number 6 will be in 25 years. We'll be old.
Yeah. Tough shit.
Yeah. All right. So I just want to briefly discuss this horror icon that was created and how it compares to the other horror icons that we have. Right. Where does this stand for you? I don't know. I think some people know who the Creeper is. I think people have at least seen 1 or 2. Maybe not a lot of people have seen 3 or 4. Good for them. But I mean, we didn't get many horror icons created after the 90s. And what do you think of this attempt of this icon as this villain?
I mean, it's an interesting villain. I mean, again, there's still a lot to tell with them. I mean, after 3 movies, we know like basically next to nothing about him or where he comes from or who he is or what he is, as they allude to in the third one, right? I mean, there's a lot more to go with, and it's interesting because a lot of the other horror icons, they're kind of like easy to figure out. Michael Myers is like there's not a whole lot you need to figure out.
Right.
There. He's a dude who kills people. Done. Right. That's it. I mean, there's not more to it. Like this one, it's obviously like he sleeps for 23 years, he eats for 23 days. I mean, obviously there's some kind of weird, cyclical thing. Obviously he's restricted in some way. I mean, he's not just like a cicada, right?
He might be.
So I mean, yeah, maybe he's cicada evolved. Maybe that's what they are. But yeah, I mean, there's obviously more to it. I mean, I think it was a good attempt to put a little bit more lore behind like a horror icon than you normally get. But I mean, it's not bad. I would still put him in the B tier, second string of horror icons. But I mean, he's known
maybe
well
in
enough.
The 15 to 20 or 20 to 25 top icons in a franchise. I'd say in the franchise, we have a lot of icons that are just solo movies, right? But in the franchise,
yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, no, definitely.
Good addition overall so far. I mean, we have two and a half good movies, 1.5 just garbage.
Right. I mean, like I said, the character is interesting. I'd like to see more stuff about him. I'd like to know more stuff about him. So yeah, I definitely put him up on a list.
So you want the lore to go deeper?
I mean, it'd be great. I love deep lore.
Well, I mean, this is if we're saying that the Creeper's been around, we don't have to have 23 years in the future. We can have past. We can go into the past of this. We can do a Prey of the Jeepers Creepers franchise. Say 230 years before 2001. So we're looking at.
Here's what we could do: 1955. Jeepers Creepers Back to the Future crossover. Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. We can.
So where they have to keep traveling back in time 23 years to try to see if they can catch him off guard each time. Because he can't go forward because he knows you're there, right? He's going to remember you 23 years later. So you have to keep going backwards 23 years at a time to try to catch him.
All right. It sounds like you and I are making number 5 with bigger budget than what they had for number 4.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Let's do it. All right. Do it. Anything else that you kind of want to discuss with this franchise, or any like we discussed, we're really want to see it to go and what it could do better.
No, I mean, like I said, at this point, after seeing you let somebody else deal with it is what we got. So that's why I said I think they should just, give not a good budget, a modest budget back to the original guy to see if he can make something better than that. And that's his chance. And if he makes something good, then hey, maybe he can keep going with it. If he makes something like Jeepers Creepers 3 again, then again, let it sit and then 23 years later try to revive it again.
Do you think this franchise went from theater worthy to VOD, straight to VOD pretty fast?
Oh yeah. I honestly say the second one is probably VOD territory, I think, but I mean, fair enough. It got a theater, a theatrical release, and that's it's still a decent movie. But I would say, as far as movie substance goes, it's probably a VOD.
Like I said, I was pretty excited just because I was able to start potentially at a new horror icon in its infancy. I wasn't born with most of these horror icons that we have now, right? And we didn't see it until later on. And I think, because I saw it, I'm pretty sure I saw the first one, the second one in theaters. I thought, okay, great. I'm at the pinnacle at the start, the birth of a new icon. And I was really excited for that. And I'm seeing where it is now 21 years later. And I'm not excited for it, quite honestly.
Yeah, no, it was in my period of I was broke and I also wasn't very into horror movies at the time. That was the both of 1 and 2 came out in that stretch of time. So yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure whenever I would see the parts of it that I did see was on TV when it was on. But I didn't go out of my way to watch it.
Okay. I mean, will you watch number 5 if it comes out? I feel like I have to now at this point in time, unfortunately.
Well, sure. I mean, also, if it's the same guy who made Reborn, no, I don't want to watch that. Because it's going to be a sequel to this horrible thing, and it's just going to get worse. Right. I mean, but if they do something different, yeah, definitely. If they have the original guy make it, or even if they have somebody new make it, that's fine too. I mean, I'll definitely watch it. But if it's the same people who did Reborn, no, I'm not going to bother.
And I agree. I think 2024 we should bring back 1 and 2 to theaters to bring the hype back up and have that solid entry that really is needed for this to continue as a series.
Mm-hmm.
I'd hate to see it to die, but if it has to, it has to.
Yeah, well, like I said, just wait 23 years and we can
2 more years and then 20.
Correct. That's right.
All right. Well, I think we've kind of, something we never mentioned. I want to mention this real fast. Jeepers Creepers song is played 1 and 2 extensively. We didn't get that song in Reborn. We got some generic rip-off guy trying to portray, Jeepers, like I like your eyes or something like that.
Yeah, it was weird because I did notice that. It's like I mean, it was cost like a nickel to put the original Jeepers Creepers in there. I mean, it can't be that expensive, right? But yeah, they had somebody singing. It wasn't like they just sang a new version of that same song. They sang a different version of it. And it said Creeper and Peeper, but I don't think it said Jeeper. Or maybe he said Jeepers and then Peepers, but there was one of the Eepers was
where'd you get those Peepers?
Yeah, it was something weird like that. But yeah, it was bizarre. Like it tried to sound like it was from the same era, but I think it was like
this year.
Right. I think it was like a different version. Like they couldn't get the rights to it. It was
we have the knockoff Jeepers Creepers song with knockoff costumes. Yeah. Essentially what it comes down to. The Spirit Halloween Jeepers Creepers song.
And then Reborn, whenever he had to kill somebody, he had to put that song on every time. Right. And then he was very upset when they broke.
I know. You know how hard it is to find phonographs like that? That's an antique.
He was very upset.
Yes. I forgot to mention that. I'm like, you know what? That bothered me no end watching Reborn. Like they only have the song. Like, all right. Well, I think that's all I have to say. Anything else from you, Salem?
No, that's
All
about
right.
it.
Well, in that case, let's stay tuned for next week's podcast, where we'll be discussing our first convention/movie marathon since we've been doing this podcast that we are going to, and it's called The Massacre at the Davis Theater in Chicago. Let's hope we see some really cool things there. We're going to be there sponsoring Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and we will be reporting back our experiences from going to this convention, seeing what it's like with sponsorship and everything and the like. I know you've been to horror conventions. This is kind of my first one, let alone kind of a horror movie marathon.
Mhm.
So I know you've been here a few times for sci-fi. So excited for this.
Oh, I'm super
All right.
excited.
Well, in that case, I am Graveyard and saying, "Have you checked on the children?"
And I'm Salem saying, long live the new flesh. Farewell.